It was December 25th of 2010, Christmas Day. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, and we had, like many do, a good spread before us. And I had my plate full of food and began to eat. And halfway through the meal, I came to sweet potato casserole. Now, many of you probably have a recipe for sweet potato casserole or a memory, and we could get into arguments about with marshmallows or without marshmallows, but as I began to eat that sweet potato casserole, I found myself weeping. And I had to excuse myself from the table, and I went into my old bedroom, the bedroom that I'd now been at that point living in for several months, which was indicative of the state of my life at that point. In 2010, that was probably, at that point of my life, the worst year that I had had. I'd been living with my parents for several months after having lived all over and been a part of several different ministries and being on my own for several years at this point. But I was 22 years old and back living in my parents' spare bedroom because I had made a mess of my life. I began that year, 2010, with a lot of hope and a lot of anticipation for many of the good things that were supposed to be coming my way. It was going to be a year of getting married. It was a year of moving into a full-time ministry position and leadership. It was a year that was supposed to be marked by victory and triumph. But soon those things started to fade away one by one. That year, the young lady I was supposed to be married to called off the engagement, and I found myself very broken. And lest you think me to be like Job, who was just a man who had many of these things happen to him, though he was righteous, I was the primary architect of so many of these different things that had come upon me, had made terrible decisions. I was caught up in pride. I was in many ways addicted to pornography, and I could not find my way out of my own self-sufficiency and my own picture of myself as the one who was always right. And so moving on through this year, I found myself with a broken engagement, embarrassed because I had planned on having my whole family there, and many of them had already bought plane tickets, and I had to make the calls one by one to say that the wedding was not moving forward. And deep down, I think I knew that much of that was my own fault, but I couldn't admit that to myself. So I tried to do what I had always done, push on and move forward, do the next thing and act like nothing was wrong. And so as I pushed forward into the summer, I had plans to help lead a new ministry for young ministry leaders and those who felt like they were called into ministry, and was a main organizer of this thing, only to find that that ministry, while the week felt like it went well, fell apart after that with a host of issues and terrible things that happened that were hidden, unfortunately, by other leaders in that ministry. All of it came crumbling down, and I found myself where I had been at the beginning of the year in anticipation of the many great things that would happen, now fully disappointed and disillusioned. And I took a job that had originally been offered to me, and I had accepted, thinking that this was going to be provision for starting a young family, and instead it just became what felt like a trap of working 60, 70, and 80-hour weeks with no purpose behind it. I found myself lost, found myself drifting. I found myself uninterested and depressed and not sure where the next step of my life would take me. As I proceeded through this year, the capstone event of this year happened on November 20th of 2010, as my older brother, who I had for the last several months got to reconnect with in a way that I hadn't in years. We shared a room all growing up, and he was only 2 years older than me, and there were many points in our lives where we had been close, but over the last several years, I had been so caught up and so absorbed in what was going on in my own life that I hadn't really been connected to him at all. And so whenever I moved back to my hometown in my parents' spare bedroom, we reconnected at a point of his life where he was also going through difficulties, where he was going through divorce, where he was going through disillusionment and not sure what that next step of his own life would look like. We reconnected, and for the first time in years, we were brothers again. We would go out and we would have meals together. We would grab coffee. We would grab lunch. I would simply just go over and hang out with him, and we would spend time together. And it hadn't happened like that in years. And we had, again, started to reestablish that close connection that brothers have. But on the night of November 20th, I received a call that he had been shot and he had been killed. And again, this year, which has already been a hard year, which had already broken my sense of self, which had already begun to tear down those well-constructed facades that I had had of viewing myself as strong and as of good, of a leader and of a good Christian, had begun to fall apart. And whenever that happened, it just sent that all into overdrive. The questioning, the doubt, the uncertainty, the sadness, and the depression. And I found myself at the end of that year trying to hold it all together, thinking that I was doing a pretty good job, still not fully free of my own pride, but having made it through the funeral and holding up family and trying to be the one to do all of the things that needed to be done to deal with my brother's final affairs. And as we approached Thanksgiving, it was all a blur, and as we made it through to the end of the year, it all seemed like it was holding on by a thread. And whenever I took a bite of that sweet potato casserole and realized that my brother wouldn't be there to eat it with me, I finally let the dam break. It was the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back, and all of the tears that I had been holding back through that whole year, the disappointment, the frustration with myself and my own sin, the frustration with others, both righteous and unrighteous, all came crashing down. And I just found myself feeling devoid of all the things that Christmas often represents of peace. I didn't have a sense of peace. Of joy, absolutely not. I had no joy in my life at that moment. I had little more than depression and just a stubbornness to try to make it to the next day. Love. Well, I had had many friends and family, my parents and others who I'd been friends with for years, who reached out to me in love and compassion at that moment. All I felt was cold and hope. I had no hope at that moment. And I found myself laying face down on my bed in a room that I used to share with my brother, just utterly broken and lost and disillusioned and uncertain of how I was going to move forward with the next day and the day after that. And in the midst of all of this, there was a glimmer, a little light in the midst of all the darkness. And it wasn't some radical change, and it wasn't that Jesus appeared to me in bodily form in my room, and it wasn't some audible voice of the Lord. Honestly, what it was desperation. As I had come to the point where I realized that it could not be me, that I could not do it, that I was not strong enough or smart enough, that I was not good enough to be able to do this thing on my own, to be able to make it through this life on my own. And though I had been a Christian for years and years and years, Jesus had in many ways been that break glass in case of emergency option, because I had convinced myself that I could do it, that I was strong and smart, that I was capable and able, that I was young and energetic, and that I could make this life work on my own. And in that moment, I came to the full crushing realization that I wasn't enough. Even though many people would tell me, you're enough. Even though the world seemed to always tell us that the solution to our problems was to realize that we are enough. What rescued me from that time was a realization that I was not enough. That I was in desperate need of someone who was. And again, there was no shining light from heaven or angel chorus that met me on that Christmas day of 2010. But there was a still small voice that gave me the one thing that I needed most in this season. hope. The hope that it wasn't on my shoulders to fix my life. The hope that I couldn't do this alone. The hope that it ultimately wasn't up to my strength or my cunning, that it wasn't up to my charisma or anything else to be able to fix this situation, but that I could cast every single one of my cares onto the Lord. That ultimately He would be the one who would hold me up whenever I felt like I had no strength to stand. That ultimately He would be the one to wrap me in His arms and comfort me whenever there seemed to be no consolation in this life. And on that Christmas day, I met the same Savior who came to earth thousands of years before to give hope. And in that moment, I found that spark that rekindled that hope in my life for the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. And maybe this Christmas, you find yourself in the same type of situation. That you've had a hard year, a hard month, a hard decade. And you find all of those calls of the world that would tell you that you are enough to be empty and hollow. And you don't feel like you're enough, and you don't feel like you're strong enough, and you don't feel like you're smart enough, and you don't feel like you have any of the answers. I want to affirm that and say that you don't have to. That there is one who has all of the answers. There is one who has all of the strength necessary. There is one who has all of the wisdom, all of the grace, and all of the love. And He invites you into a relationship with Him. Maybe for you, like it was for me, that's a reminder that we often need because we get caught in self-sufficiency and in the draw of this world to believe that we can do it on our own. But can I remind you that there is a Savior who calls you to let Him do it for you, that He has paid it all, that He has done it all, and He will hold you up even whenever you feel like all hope is lost. He can give you hope. And maybe for you, this is a call for the first time, and what you need most of all is hope. And maybe your life is such a shipwreck that whether it was by circumstances beyond your control or your own decisions or a combination of the two, that you just feel lost and desperate, depressed and hopeless. Can I just remind you, can I just tell you, can I just invite you to come to the one who can give hope, who Himself is our peace, who Himself is the limitless, bottomless fountain of love, who can give hope even whenever all hope seems lost. So this Christmas season, wherever you find yourself at, if you find that you are without hope, if you find that you are at the end of your rope and you feel like you have no way to move forward and you don't know who holds the future, you don't know what could happen tomorrow, I just want to remind you as someone who has been there that there is hope to be found in the worst of situations. There's light to be found in the darkness, and His name is Jesus. And as He came to the earth 2,000 years ago and was heralded by the angels reminding the shepherds that they had good news of great joy, which would be for all people. The message of Christmas that Jesus came, that He lived a life that none of us could live, that He died a death that all of us deserved, and that now He offers hope to all who would come to Him, is a message that I desperately needed on that Christmas day of 2010. And it's a message that I desperately need today to be reminded of, that without Him I can do nothing. And so if that's you, I just want to encourage you that Jesus is with you, that Jesus is calling you, that Jesus can be your hope, your peace, your love, and your light this Christmas. Come to Him because He has all that you need. So may the God of hope this Advent season give you all hope, that you might reach out to the one who has given all for you, that you might now have peace, joy, hope, love, and reconciliation to the Father. May that be the case for you this Christmas.